Shalom, you got Shalom yet?
Shalom, who?
A new guy named Shalom. He joined Yeshiva like a week or two ago.
Huh?
A couple of days ago.
Last week. Sorry.
You ready?
Sure, yeah.
Okay, guys. I want to speak, we always speak on the Pasha of the week, seeking out things that we can kind of directly apply to ourselves. The Pasha of the week is Pasha's Terumah. And this is where we were commanded to build a Mishkan, which was the temporary Beis HaMikdash. And the pasuk there, Hashem says, "V'asu li mikdash v'zachanti b'soichom," that Yidden will make for me a mikdash, and I will dwell b'soichom within them. So the Rebbe, the Friedrich Rebbe, explains in the Maimer, from Yud Shvat, that even though the simple pshat in the pasuk that there'll be a mikdash and I will be amongst them, but the literal translation of the word b'soichom is within them, and that is really the inner meaning of this whole mitzvah. That in fact, Hashem dwells within every Yid. And the Rebbe discusses in the Maimer how this can come about and so forth. I want to discuss this in Indian. Not only how this can come about in terms of what we can do, but what does this imply? What does this tell us about ourselves? All too often, we take directives and teachings from the Torah as commands coming from outside, commands not relating to who we are, not understanding of where we are coming from, just, so to speak, imposing upon us a mode of activity, a mode of action and life that is not natural to us, but we have to obey it, because after all, we have to follow and obey. As a matter of fact, the Rebbe says in the Maimer, he speaks about that one of the major Avedas in the Mishkan was Korbanis, and Avedas are Korbanis, Beruchnius, and the spiritual version. In Avedas Odom, this is Iskafia Vizhap. Iskafia means to suppress one's desires and direct one's activities towards Kedusha. And Eden, are obedient and kosher people, and they say, okay, listen, this is what I have to do, this is what I have to do. But as a result, we lose sight of ourselves and we lose the sense of being participants in what's going on. This is very, very far from what it is intended to be. And as I mentioned over and over during various occasions, the Torah never intended to make us robots. On the contrary, the intent of the Torah is to make us fully developed intellectual people, intelligent people, sensitive intellectually and emotionally. And to know who we are and be in touch with ourselves, be in touch with our neshamas. This is the phase of it, this is the element of it that I want to discuss. And as we are going to, so to speak, touch upon it and reveal it and identify it, then we will first begin to understand how it is possible, how it is real and realistic to say that v'shachanti b'soichom, that Hashem will dwell within them. Not in the tabernacle amongst them, but within them, within every individual Jew. Like the Rebbe says in the mind, within every Jew. For one thing, we know, which he doesn't know that I don't hear already.
Imagine it could.
Because it doesn't have a seichel.
That's right. Doesn't have seichel, it's correct.
It's just programmed.
We mentioned, and it is expressly stated in the previous week's parsha, that before the Torah was given to the Eden had pronounced, they said, Nase v'nishma. We will do what you tell us, and then we'll also understand. V'nishma. We will listen to it. Now, this Nase v'nishma was not something that Moshe Rabbeinu told the Eden, you better say Nase v'nishma. Never happened. This is something which came from the Eden themselves. They were exposed to recognize the godly truth, and they were able to relate to it personally to the extent, but they said that our relation to Hashem is so clear, is so pure, and so simple that understanding is not only superfluous, it would be interfering with our real relationship. Our relationship with Hashem is much deeper than understanding. Understanding can come afterwards. And this, the Yidden said volitionally, meaning by their own choice, by their own recognition. The Medrash says that when Yidden said Nase v'nishma, Hashem said, Mi gilo lebonai rozeh, shemalachi hashoros mishtamshim beh. Who revealed to my children this secret, which is a secret that was kept, so to speak, within the realm of the Malachim. And Eden didn't need to be taught, to be told about this secret. This is something which they knew inherently from their neshamas.
Is that what we inherit from our forefathers?
We inherit it from our forefathers, fine, but we have it. It's our inheritance. in Alter Rebbe explains in Tanya that every Yid has a nefesh olikis, nefesh abamis, as two nefoshes, a godly soul and an animal soul. And these two souls are in battle, in constant battle, at war with each other. Each one wants to be the sole ruler in this city called the human body. That's how the Rebbe explains it graphically. Now, let us think about this and see how this war is actually taking place. The nefesh habahamis, we call it the animal soul. This battle is waged, is taking place in the physical body, in the physical world. Which means within the reality that the nefesh habahamis, that the animal soul can very readily relate to. Right? This is its realm. It's home. There is a sikha from Rebbe. But the Rebbe explains the first Rashi in Chumash. Rashi says, why did the Chumash, the Torah, begin from the creation? And that is in order, Rashi says, in order to provide a response that we should be able, the Jewish people should be able to respond to any accusations of wrongdoing in capturing the lands of the 7 nations. And it says, Listim atem shekivashtem eretz sheba amam. You're listing your robbers because you captured the lands belonging to other nations. And because of this, the Chumash began, the Torah begins from Bereshit, from the creation, in order to tell the whole world and give us a means to respond and say, listen, the world belongs to God. He created it. So he gave it to this is not land belonging to them, belonging to the other nations inherently. It was given to them by the Creator. He gave it to them for a period of time. Now he took it away from them and gave it to us. The land belongs to him. This is the way Rashi describes this whole debate. And the Rebbe asks a question. Is it conceivable that the whole Torah, the whole sequence of the Torah, was altered in order to provide a debating stance against the other nations? The Torah is a Torah for us. It's a directive for Jewish people. Debate for other nations, either we can debate them or we don't debate them, we ignore them. I mean, for that, the Torah was changed, altered from the sequence that it should properly have been. So the Rebbe explains, no, that this is not what it means. It means that this is really a teaching for us. And what is this teaching about? This teaching is that the claim and the accusation that other nations will have against us is a totally different principle, totally different thing. Not that you conquered other people's nation, other people's land. They will come and they will say, you are a godly people. You're a spiritual people. So go to the spiritual world. What are you doing over here? You don't belong here. You're strangers over here. In other words, there is a perspective. Certainly the Nefesh Abamis has that perspective. I feel at home over here. You, the Nefesh Olekis, are an intruder. You come to capture my domain. Right? And this is not just, my question here is not just a theoretical academic question. The question is a very practical question. There's an expression that is quoted from the Berditchever Rebbe. Berditchever. You heard of Rabbi Abba Paltiel. Rabbi Abba Paltiel was a very big Ohev Yisrael. He was a big advocate for the Jewish people. And one time he stood up on the bima and he cried out and he said, Rebbeinu Shalom, what do you want from your people? All the taivas and all the whole world, you place right in front of them. The Gan Eden in Olam Haba and all the good things in the spiritual things you put in a book. And you want them to fight against all these taivas. That's not a fair challenge. If you want to really try the Jewish people, try them the opposite way. Put the Gan Eden in Olam Haba and all the good things in front of them. And put the taivas in a book. But they will be able to read about that. There is you could somehow get to taivas and see which one they'll choose then. This was the Berditchever's argument. It's an important thing to understand that yes, this world, our exposure to the world, is something that lends itself much more readily to the Nefesh Abamis. He feels much more comfortable in it. And it's an automatic draw, so to speak. You don't need to sit and learn and really work on yourself to want to eat breakfast. That goes straight, unchallenged. The challenge is to delay it until you daven first. But to eat breakfast is not a challenge. You don't have to take a book and learn and say you're supposed to learn breakfast. Sometimes it is even difficult to delay it, the time that it takes to wash and the time it takes to make a bracha. Right? The behemoth runs right for it. So this is a reality. So the question is, how do we pit the Nefesh Olekis against the Nefesh Abamis in the arena that belongs to the Nefesh Abamis? But the Nefesh Olekis is like a stranger.
So home advantage?
It's more than home advantage. It's true. It's home advantage is even home advantage is also a significant thing, right? But this is more than that. It's a different kind of arena. The Nefesh Olekis can't even relate to it. So I don't know what you want from me. I want to sit and learn. What do you want? I can't even begin this debate. What does this tell us? Please understand, this tells us that it is within our capacity, within the capacity of our neshama and our intellectual insights, to recognize the truth of godliness on par, as a nefesh on par means equally, as the Nefesh Abamis recognizes the reality of the world. And actually a little beyond that. This is an important thing to recognize, to understand. I heard your question. When we learn about godliness, wherever it is, whether it's in the Chumash, in Gemara, in Tanya, any place, the Nefesh HaBahamis comes right on and says, okay, it's okay for you to dream about these things, to imagine these things. But remember, the reality is right here. That's the real thing. What is this? What does this give you? It's just a nice thought. You can imagine it. Because after all, this is the real thing. The world is a real thing. Right?
What is it talking about, the animal soul? I
Hmm?
think it's nice to imagine what?
About godliness, about ruchnias, about niceties, in intellectual pursuits. It's fine, you know. Be a good boy, you'll get a good mark. But don't forget the reality. The real thing is over here. And we have the capacity, this is important for us to understand. We have the capacity in the depths of our intellect, depths of our soul, to recognize that, number one, that this is not an imaginary thing, but this is very real. It is not only very real to the extent that it can counter, it can stand up to Nefesh HaBahamis, but ultimately it is more real than what the Nefesh HaBahamis presents from the world. This is the element that what a Ayid is. And because I'll discuss it in a little bit more specific, but we have to understand this is a principle. Because of this capacity, because of this element that we have as a Jew within our souls, that we truly, really can recognize, and we have the cognizance of the reality, the godly reality, because of this, we can make a mishkan within our heart and soul. And we can have godly dwelling within ourselves, besoichom, within them. And it's not a construed and artificially created idea. It is an absolute reality. And as I said, it is even more real than our recognition and cognizance of the physical world. This is what I mentioned before, and I'm going to try as much as possible within the counting limits of our shir to identify with this element. But first I pointed out that he said Nasa v'nishma. And they said Nasa v'nishma. It is implying clearly, the statement of Nasa v'nishma is that this is not something that we just know because we understand, because we have proof. If it is because we have proof, so first we have to nishma, we have to get the proof. And then we can do it. This means that we know it before any intellectual proofs. Because we are capable to know the absolute truth itself. And this is what a Yid relates to. This is what a Yid identifies with. much, much more readily than with the physical world itself. Ultimately, the physical world becomes a means to an end, not a purpose in itself at all. Like you need to do a mitzvah, you need a physical world to do mitzvahs. But not that this should be an end in itself. I want to explain in a, so to speak, in an encapsulated manner, in a very brief manner, to understand what are we talking about? What do we recognize? What is it that we recognize? And we recognize it to the extent we said you can supersede and counter the nefesh habayis, counter the physical world. The physical world, we know, is basically the natural process, nature. What is nature? Nature is where one element, one situation brings about another one, brings about a third one. Let us take a very simple example that I always like to use and a very, so to speak, down to earth. This table is standing up. Every one of us can explain why the table is standing. Even though this board is kind of elevated from the ground, but we can all understand how it stands. Because it has legs that are supporting it. It doesn't stand on its own, because it has to be a table, and table has to be 3 feet up off the ground. They put up legs, and the legs are supporting it 3 feet off the ground. Not because of its functionality, understand? It's not held up by its function, by its purpose. It's held up by the legs. And then comes a purpose. They built it like this in order to be able to use it as a table. So if we understand this is a very simple, so to speak, demonstration of what nature is. Nature is a way of looking, of recognizing in everything in the world as being the result of some other effect, not its own, it doesn't make itself like the table. What is the function of the table? That it should stand on legs. The legs are inadvertent. Do you understand inadvertent means? The legs are not important at all. What's the important things on the table? There's the top surface held up at a certain height, so that we can use it. That's it. That's what the table is about. So we can, when we look at the world, we can approach it in two angles. Please understand. We can approach it and say, you know what a table is? A table is a board on 4 legs. This is looking at it from a physical perspective. Looking at it from a human perspective. From a human perspective, I always speak about Das and Mushi. What is a table? A table is a board that's suspended at some height that is convenient for me to use. How it's suspended is immaterial. You understand what I'm saying? The real thing over here is what its function, what its human quality element is. Not how it is suspended. That's immaterial. when we think of a table, what do you think? What is the value of a table? Is it functionality, is it human quality, or it's four legs that are holding it up? Right? Everyone understands that it's functionality. The reason and the purpose for which it was made, not how it was made. You understand? But this is a whole battle. It sounds trivial, but this is the whole battle. And let me explain. We'll go to something more significant, and we will see clearly where this battle is. The sun rises in the morning, we spoke about this all the time, and gives light to the world, and then sets at night. Okay. So here we have exactly the same two views as we had in the table. He repeated exactly. Just as in the table, you could say, no, the table is a board on four legs as a result of the fact that there is four legs, therefore the board can be suspended, therefore you can use it. The functionality is like a secondary thing. Naturally, it stands on the four legs. Or you could say, no, its main thing is the human element, and the four legs is inadvertent. That's just a means to support. Exactly the same way you can look at the entire world. We have day and night. We have day. How do we have day? When we have the sun. When the sun sets, it becomes night. Now, this phenomenon that the sun rises and the sun sets, it's a natural phenomenon. It's a natural phenomenon. However, we calculate it, whether it is the sun rotating around the earth or rotating the earth and rotating around its axis, makes no difference in that respect. Because the fact is, it is a natural phenomenon that if there is going to be a sun, and the sun is going to hit an earth, it's going to be day. It happens to be that the sun is here and the earth is here and they're in proximity to one another. And when the earth turns around and to see the sun, or the sun comes around to see the earth, then becomes day. So day, from that perspective, is an inadvertent, unintended result of a natural rotation. Like a table being the result of four legs. Or we could say no. The real thing of the sun, the real thing is the day. There's a world that needs daylight. And it needs daylight for the purposes of human development and human activity. It's a real true phenomenon. Not an inadvertent result of some kind of natural quirk. The sun, okay, this is a means by which the light is coming. It could come any other way. It happens to be made this way. But primarily what we have is daytime. Because this is when the world wakes up, and when the human being can do and accomplish his purpose. Can you see this? You see this contrast?
What it's made of?
Excuse me?
For?
I'm sorry?
The purpose and how it happens?
Yeah. There's an actual way that it happens, and then its purpose. And you can look at it in two different ways. You can look at it that the purpose is just an accident. The real thing that's happening is the physical, natural thing. which will be identical to saying that the table is an unintended, is an accident. The real thing is the four legs that are holding up the table. So the behemoth, the nefesh habahamis, the behemoth, what does the behemoth recognize? Behemoth recognizes the physical phenomenon, just the physical thing. Like I mentioned to you many times, that when you enter a chasana hall, and you have the entire setup with settings and tables and chairs and food and all that. And a cat enters at the same time. Remember that analogy? What does the cat see? The whole thing is in order that there should be food over there. What does a human being lahavdil see? The food the food is the result of a much greater thing. There's a simcha, there's a chasana. The whole food is to celebrate the simcha, not the other way around. The simcha is not because there is food. The cat says there is simcha, there is food. You understand? This is a phenomenon that is an ongoing thing, and it touches every aspect of human life. And we, as human beings, on the first level as human beings, and the second level as godly beings, as Jews, have the capacity to recognize, personally, truly recognize, not just imagine, but truly recognize that what is the actual truth, what is really occurring over here, not the natural sequence of events. It is the real thing for which that it brings about. You understand? The life element, the light.
That's the ultimate purpose.
I'm sorry?
I understand the ultimate purpose.
The ultimate purpose. And we can relate to it. We can see with our intellect. Yeah, that's the real thing. The real thing is not the fact that there is a natural sun meets earth. That is a means to an end. And what is the end? That there should be light on the earth. This is a godly view of the world. You understand what I'm saying? This is saying that he's saying that there is a purpose, it's an intent. It's not an accident. It's not just a physical accident that is extremely sophisticated, but altogether it's a physical phenomenon, a natural phenomenon. Can you see that in our intelligence we have the capacity to actually relate to this truth? And lahavdil, the cat absolutely has no inkling of that at all. No matter how many years of training it'll go through, it'll never, ever, ever reach this recognition. So we can truly be hosts to a godly presence. Having said that, I want to say the following, just to to ourselves. No. This is to ourselves and a message to the whole world. Who wants to eavesdrop today? We have to recognize this is who we truly are. This intellectual perception, this is who we truly are. This is an indestructible element. This is a godly element. First an intellectual element, and then a godly element. Recognizing the truth of who we are, the true human and godly soul that the Rebbe gave us. This can clearly counter the shtusim of the Nefesh Haba'is. There's no question about it. And the first step, this can truly keep us up, keep our spirits up, not allow us to fall down. Falling down is only within nature. You know what in these days it is entirely kind of timely and pertinent. The story with the Meir and Primshianer. Right? Everybody knows the story. The Meir and Primshianer from Primshian. In Primshian was a town in Poland, and the Meir was a Talmid from the musician Magid. He was one of the Rebbe. He was the Rebbe over there. He was the Rov. He was a holy man. So in that town, the mikveh was down the hill.
What?
The mikveh was down. You have to go down the hill. So normally going down the hill is not a big problem, but when it came to the winter time, and over there, the winter was constantly from the first snow till Pesach. It was winter. Okay, it was covered, and it was impossible to walk down the mountain. So everyone would go around a circle around the mountain, which was a much longer trek, and in order to get to the mikveh. Because to walk down the mountain straight was impossible. So it was slippery, it was impossible to walk. So one time, some merchants passed by the town, and they're seeing everybody going around the mountain. I said, why are you going around? He said, because they tried, it's impossible to go down. So they looked around and say, oh, but the Meir is going down. The Meir himself is going down the mountain. So they said the Meir can do it, but nobody else can do it.
A mayor of the town?
The Meir.
Oh, right, mayor.
Meir Permishaner. He was not the Rebbe, but he was the Meir. The Meir is doing it, so they said, the Meir can do it, we can do it. They wanted to kind of cool off the respect. If he can do it, we can do it. So of course they started walking down the mountain, and they slipped and fell, and it was miraculous that they came out alive. And they said, yeah, it's like impossible. How does he do it? So the townspeople said, go and ask him. But we never questioned him. Go and ask him. What ask him? Go and ask him. So they went to the mayor and asked him, okay, we apologize. We ask you forgiveness for having trivialized who you are. But how is it? How do you do this? So he said that when you're tied up to the top, then you don't fall down. He says, Meirel is sigibun oim. Meirel is tied up to the top, upwards. So that's why Meirel doesn't fall down. So this is, male, this is on a completely different level. But all of us, by virtue of our neshama, of our intellect, we all are tied up to the top. Not to suggest anyone walking down a steep hill in the frost. But we're all tied up to the top. In other words, we can all see beyond the natural phenomenon, beyond that which the Nefesh Abami sees, beyond that which the cat sees. Not only can we see it, but we can really relate to it and live up to it. And therefore, to fall down in spirit and to be dejected is totally out of kilter, out of character. It's totally out of character for us. In the world, there could be good and bad, could be destroyed, can be built, but the real thing, the godly element, doesn't get destroyed. This is there all the time. This is the reality itself. This is the point which I wanted to bring across. There's no such thing by us as being dejected. There's a saying among Chassidim that atzvus, which means dejection, atzvus.
I thought that's
Hmm?
I thought that's essence.
Atzvus, not atzmus. Atzvus, dejection. By Chassidim is an isa deiraisa. It's a prohibition from the Torah. It's on par of being chazer, mechal Shabbos, or anything like that. Because how can one be atzvus if he understands and he experiences and he recognizes the godliness that is within his own soul? So this is something for us always to remember. And if Hashem, we do fall down because the Nefesh Abamis drags us down, we have to bring the light onto it. And remember the absolute reality with which we see the world. We see the reality. And be able to pick ourselves up from any doldrum, from any and dejection. Well, in general, there is an approach. That Rambam says that when a person finds that he needs to correct a certain mode of behavior, the way to do it is to go to the opposite direction. So even though when he goes in the opposite direction, he is going against himself. It's not natural for him. But eventually, he'll get the point, and it'll break through. So, let us start from a very simple thing. Any time that one feels any kind of down, of atzvus and dejection, quietly sing a nigun. Quietly, don't without making a fool of yourself. But if you sing a nigun, that nigun will lift you up. And it's not, so to speak, an artificial reality. It's the reality itself. Because every Yid recognizes the godly truth in the world, as we just now explained.
Isn't there some kind of, isn't there other atzvos which is it's okay though?
The other atzvus, the Alter Rebbe explains, is not atzvus. It's a misnomer. It appears like atzvus, but it really is not atzvus. Atzvus, practically, it identified when somebody doesn't feel like going to do anything. He's so disappointed in himself that he gives up. The other Atzvus is the opposite of that. It propels him to stronger activity and to decisive activity. Because I failed here, it propels him to stronger activity. That's not Atzvus. That's called bevirus. It's called the Alter Rebbe says. Being personally bitter and decisively trying to counter it and lift oneself up. It's not isolated at all.
Right. Also, is it good if one feels atzvus to use that to do like personal accounting? Like to utilize that?
This would be an answer on a subject, on an individual basis. If you ask me, not to you.
Are you speaking specifically to him or to everybody?
I wouldn't mind if it's for everybody. Don't have to make a cheshbon. Just go and do what they have to do. Forget about Atzvus. Atzvus is not a good thing. Yeah, it talks about it and all that, but not. It depends. It depends what, who and what and where. For us here, it's much better to just get out of it. We stand to lose much more than to gain. All right, so I am wishing us all, on both fronts, on the intellectual front, that we should begin, we should really understand the truth of Torah, the truth of Chassidus, and be able to relate to it intellectually, understand what this is about. And then on the emotional, on the personal arena, to stay above, to be tied up to the top, not to fall down, and to do everything with zest and happiness, and that is really the only path to success in God's help.
Amen.
Okay. So somebody has to turn it off over there.